This conference will now be recorded.
All right, it sounds like we are good to go on the recording. So I will go ahead and start with a roll call. So we have joining us tonight, Elva James.
Here.
Jean Croshan.
Here.
Amy Kristen Presson.
Here.
Nick Harvey.
Yeah, I'm here.
Drew Smith.
Here.
Jim Beatty.
Hi, everybody. Here.
And Stuart Frescus.
Here.
Okay, did I miss anyone? Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and start with our program. And the first item on that is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. I would entertain a motion from someone on the committee to approve those.
Motion.
We have a motion from Drew. And if we could get a second on that.
I'll second it. I'm allowed to vote.
Okay.
It's Alba.
Yes, you're allowed to vote, Elva, yes.
Okay, I second.
Okay, great. So we have a second from Elva. So we're going to go ahead and just do a quick roll call vote to approve those. So Elva,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Nick, Drew,
Yes.
Jim, and Stuart.
Yes.
All right, so the minutes are approved. So with that, we're going to hop into our next item on the agenda, which is the bicycle crash report. I'm going to hand it over to Doug Pode, our senior transportation planner, who's going to walk us through some of the interesting information that he's collected about this.
Thank you, Tim. I'd like to, again, thank all of you for listening in this evening. Tonight is the basically official rollout of this report. It was completed last month, and we are now going through the presentations and showing what we have found. Specifically, what we did was look at bicycle crashes that occurred in 2018 through and including 2022. And the information that we used for this report comes from the actual police reports that are taken for all crashes. It was a very time-consuming process and going through all of those. The individual officers not always report bicycle crashes the same, so we had to look at various different ways to extract the data, and we have successfully completed that and did some substantial analysis, which I'd like to cover tonight. There's a lot of it in the report. I'm going to just try to highlight some of the information. It is available on our website. Specifically, I think it's still available on our webpage towards our main webpage, towards the bottom. So if you'd like at some point later on, go through and actually read through the report, please do so. This is very exciting. This is actually a third report that we have done in a series, and the last two have been similar in that they were done, the first one for 2007 and 2012, and the second was 2013 to 2017. This information I did not put in this report, but would like to just share it to you. For this report, there were a total of 207 bicycle crashes within Tippecanoe County. This is fewer than the previous report, which there were 228, and a significantly fewer number, 310 in the 2007 and 2012 report. Likewise, for injury crashes, for this report, there was 172. And if you could go to page 5, please, Tim. For the previous report, 13 to 17, there were 177. That's good right there. And then in the 7 to 12 report, there were a whopping 257. The news that I have to report is that within this 5-year period, there were 2 fatalities, unfortunately. And in the last report, there was 1, and in the first report, there were 0. So while the total number and injury crashes have been slowly decreasing, the number of fatalities have increased, unfortunately. So overall, that kind of gives you a general idea of the crashes between the 3 reports. Looking at this page at table 1, you can see again there were 207 crashes. The year that had the most was 2018, 59. And as you can see, that was also the year that had the greatest number of injury crashes at 48, greatest number of incapacitating injuries, and the number of fatalities. One would expect that 2020 probably would have been the year with the fewest number of crashes because of COVID, but actually it was the following year, 2021. There were only 29 in 2021, but 38 in 2020. As you can see, you can look across. The numbers by year did vary. The number of injury crashes, of course, the fewest was in 2021. And the number of incapacitating injuries actually were the smallest numbers in actually 2019, and then in 2021, and then the fewest in 2022. So rather interesting story to portray there. One would have thought, again, COVID, you would have seen the fewest crashes, but actually it was the following year. So going to the next page, please, Tim. The table 2 right there. Since we know now the number of bicycle crashes, what we did was also compare it to the total number of crashes within Tippecanoe County. And as you can see, the 5 years, there were 24,703. And the average was just under 1% or 0.8% of the crashes were bicycle related. You see the worst year, not surprising, was 2018 with 1.1%. And then again, 2021, no surprise there at 0.6%. So right below that, we did a quick comparison with state data. And you can see a statewide percentage compared to the total number of crashes to the total number of bicycle crashes. The 4-year average was 0.3%, and the Tippecanoe County was at 0.9%. So unfortunately, with those, it looks like there are more bicycle crashes here within Tippecanoe County as you compared statewide between the total number and the number of crashes. So following this, we have a bunch of standard comparisons that we do with all crash reports. The first one here is looking at the crashes by month. And this is a really great figure here. And it shows you the months that had the greatest number and the fewest number of crashes. Of course, you could see August with the greatest number. And I suspect, like with this, and with the previous reports, that, of course, Purdue University starts in August. So that's when we see the greatest number. And of course, all the other schools start in August as well. And then, of course, we do see a spike there in May. And then, of course, the winter months actually kind of interesting. In December, there was a little over 30. And the fewest actually was in March. And then, of course, we have here a comparison of the average high temperature. Just for interesting to see if there's any correlation with temperature, and there is to some degree. So going further down, I think it may be on the next couple pages, and we do have additional statistics. So if you want to see any more details about bicycle crashes by month and year, we have several tables and several bits of information discussion regarding that. If we could keep going down, keep going. Here we go, right here. The next thing we looked at were crashes by age. And here we have a breakdown by age, of course, starting with different bends here. And we have this broken down by Tippecanoe County, and then also basically east and south of the river, and west and north of the river. Going down a little further. Next page, please. Keep going. Oh, went too far. Keep going back. Sorry, I jumped ahead. Keep going back up a little bit more. And keep going back to table 7. I just want to briefly touch about that. If you look at the numbers here, no surprise. Age group 16 to 24 years had the greatest number with over 41%. And then looking down further, the age 65 and older, of course, had the fewest, only 4 crashes at 1.9%. And unfortunately, there were 10 crash reports that the officer did not collect the age information. And some of that was due to, the the officer just didn't report it. And then the person was then taken also to the hospital, and the officer did not get that information right off the bat. Going on to the next, probably the next page, please. We also looked at crashes by day of the week. Go to see if you can show table 10 and the figure 4. Kind of an interesting picture here. One may have suspected that the weekend, with more, opportunities to ride on Sunday and Saturday, you'd see the highest rates. Actually, it was on Tuesday, with just under 20% of the crashes. And of course, pretty much Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you can see they were either in the mid 30s or just slightly under. So that was rather interesting that those 3 days were fairly equal and the same. Continue to go down, please. Keep going. There's another comparison by age and day of week. We'll go by time of day as the next statistic. And this covers, shows the 5 years and the total, and then also the time bins for each hour. And if you look down the right-hand side, you will see at 11.6%, there were 24 crashes, the greatest number between 3 and 4 in the afternoon. Following that, we had just over 10%, 21 crashes between 5 and 6. So those are the 2 time periods that we saw the greatest number of crashes. And then, of course, following that, figure 5, we show that pictorially. As you can see, it points those 2 peaks out. And then, of course, not surprising, at either end, there's either none or very few. If you keep going down. And then, of course, here, what we did was we looked at the peak period by age group. Another interesting comparison, and, the 3 to 6 p.m., of course, the 16 to 24-year-olds, that was the greatest number. And then, interestingly, under 16, 15 of those. So some interesting numbers there, especially the younger cyclists. The next study or looking at was atmospheric weather conditions. And then, as you can see by the numbers here, we have it broken down by year, of course. We have it by clear, is what the report shows. Cloudy days, and then with rain and snow, no crashes occurred when it snowed, and only 12 when it was raining. So the vast majority were either on a clear, sunny day or a cloudy day. So atmospheric wise, it looks pretty good that way, except for those 12. Keep going down. We look at also lighting conditions. When the crash occurred, did it occur during daylight hours, during the dawn and dusk, or when it was dark? And dark is broken up into 2 categories. One, where the crash occurred, if there was actually, it was light, there was light there from maybe a street light, and then if there was not, And as you can see, the majority of them did occur in the daylight, and we did have a few at dusk and dawn. And the dark, we did have a number of crashes. And then it was kind of surprising. You'd think that more would be dark and not lighted, but actually it was dark but lighted. So there was 26 of those crashes. And as you can see, of course, if you look at the numbers, dark lighted, that happen more often. 2018, but then dark with not lighted, that was in 2020. Please continue to go on. And then road surface condition, was the pavement dry? Was the pavement wet? Was there snow on the road? And ice, of course, there was no ice on the road. Or let me say that again. There were no crashes when ice was present on the road. There was only one when snow was on the road. There were 21 when the road surface was wet, but the majority of the crashes were on dry pavement. And again, this information is taken directly from what the officer actually puts into the crash report. Continue to go down, please. Another thing we look at is the type of collision. This is what the officer sees when they look at a report, and they have different types of collisions that they can actually put in the report. As you can see, the greatest number of crashes by far, 97 or nearly 50%, were right angle crashes. And then there were 31 crashes when vehicle, either the bicycle or the vehicle, was turning right. Interestingly, there was 21 crashes when you had same direction side swipe. And that, of course, is when the vehicle is passing the cyclists. And then we have, of course, we also looked at right turns, now left turns. That was, there was 20 crashes. So you can see it broken down by the number. And of course, there were, very few in the low, ran off the road, backing crash. There was one, and then a collision with an object in the road. So not very many of those. If you could please go down. This next section is very important, especially for our planners, and that what we do is look at basically the crashes that where injuries occurred and then fatalities occurred. And then this actually portion of the report was expanded more so than the previous one, because safety is becoming more and more important. As a matter of fact, this past Tuesday at road school, the NDOT commissioner made it very clear that the top priority going forward, at least for now, is safety. And they want to implement a lot of safety um, things that they can do quickly, and then continue to build upon that. So this kind of goes hand in hand with that. First, I start off with, of course, Indiana produces a strategic highway safety plan. And I have here figure 9, the information for bicycle fatalities that are in the report. And then on following that on the next page, if you could please scroll to that, I have information for the state for bicycles with serious injuries. And if you keep continue downward, of course, we put that information also in the table. So if you get a chance to look at this more closely later on, you can actually read this more detailed information for the state. If you keep going down to the next page, please. And then also reiteration, because we're again talking about fatalities and serious injuries. We do have that information for Tippecanoe County. And then I'd like to point out something here in this table is that, yes, we did have 2 fatalities and we did have 172 injuries, but we had 14 what they call incapacitating injuries. And these are very serious injuries. And generally, the person that has an incapacitating injury is actually taken to the hospital more often, pretty much all the time. So in the 5-year period, there were 14 of these crashes. And then the paragraph right above the table, there is information in terms, there were 3 within West Lafayette, 2 were located actually on the cycle track east of Purdue campus, and the 3rd was on Special 52. And this is in the area around Paramount Drive. In Lafayette, 4 crashes, 4 occurred on Teal Road, and then 4 crashes. They were at South Street, South 4th Street, the 18th Street intersection, the 22nd Street, intersection, and then just west of Concord. So, it'll be interesting to see with the recent improvements that NDOT did, if there's any improvements. So that is a corridor that we will probably keep watch on for the next 5 years, especially when we do the next 5 reports. And the other 5 crashes, serious or incapacitating injury crashes were on Union Street, Salem Street, 9th Street, Main Street, and Elston Road. And if you go further down, you can see here we have a list of crashes, and these are just injury crashes. We have them listed by corridor, and then and not only did we list them by corridor, and then you can see the number, but if you go to the next page, please. Of course, here's the map where they are all located, and we have of course, where the 2 fatalities occur. The green dots show where the incapacitating injuries are, and then the blue ones are just where the injuries occurred. So, as you can see, it's rather interesting. So definitely, we need to keep an eye on Teal Road. I'll go down to the next page, please. And as mentioned here, we not only did we look at the crashes by corridor, but then we also looked at the crashes by intersection. So that's actually in the wording right there. And then we did a comparison here, bicycle crashes. And this information comes from basically the IU Public Policy Institute and Indiana Criminal Justice Institute. This directly comes from their report. So we have a comparison of fatalities within the state versus Tippecanoe County. As you can see in the state, the percentage 1.8%. For us, the 4-year average was 3.6%. Of course, the 2 we had in 2018. And then if you look at table 21, this looks at serious injuries. And again, this information is from that report. The injuries for the state, 1.2%. And then, unfortunately, for Tippecanoe County, it was higher at 2.7%. So if you go on to the next page, please. Okay, we're going to go and look more deeply into crashes by age. We just alluded to that a little bit ago earlier, but now we're going to look at it more in depth. And as you can see here, the age breakdown is quite more detailed. And as you can see, the ages 16 to 18, 25 crashes, 12.1%, but right under that, 19 to 20, 27 crashes at 13%. So, those are the 2 age groups that had the most. And if you look at basically children from 10 younger and younger, there were only 7 crashes out of the 207 crashes. So that's good. And then of course we have a figure 12 there that shows kind of the distribution in a line graph. Go to the next page. So again, here we did a comparison between the state of Indiana and Tippecanoe County by age group. And again, this comes from the Indiana Traffic Safety Facts Non-Motorist IU Public Policy Institute. And again, this is more detail than what we did in previous years, because we know we want to focus on safety. We want to look at injuries, but we also want to look at, especially children, and their numbers. But this gives a good breakdown of the age different brackets. So at a later point in time, you can see the information for 2 years here. And then further down, we have information regarding cyclists by age in terms of, the first thing we wanted to do was look at the ages between 1 and 22 years of age. So that's what we start discussing here. And we have, corridor information. And I believe if you go to page 23, yes, here it is. Here's the map showing the ages for the cyclists. And of course, the 1 to 10-year-olds, you can see the different color codes for the age groups. And of course, the blues and purples are the older kids, 16 to 22. And if you look, not surprising, Purdue University, but there are other locations in Lafayette and West Lafayette where those occur. And it's interesting where you can see a lot of those red and orange crashes for the younger cyclists where they occurred. So we thought this was a really good analysis that might be helpful for the cities to look at and see if they wanted to do anything regarding cyclists for the younger ages. You go to the next page, please. And then, of course, one of the ones that we've done is a gender comparison, looked at cyclists by sex and then also by age group. And you can see the breakdown here in the graph, and no surprising. This is, been pretty much standard in the previous two, is that there are more crashes from that male cyclists are involved in rather than female cyclists. If you keep going down to the next page, this gives two tables. The first table, 24, is a breakdown by the male cyclists that were involved, and then table 25 breaks down by the female cyclists. You can see, of course, there's the number 150 for the male cyclists, 47 for the female cyclists. And you could look at this in more detail at your convenience. Keep going down, please. Likewise, what we did was, we looked at the age of the cyclists, or bicyclists. We also looked at the age and gender of the motor vehicle driver. And figure 15, I thought, was very interesting, where the blue line is male drivers that were involved, and the red line or maroon line was female drivers. And you see, starting out, the younger drivers, more female drivers were involved, and then it switches. And then there's a short switch again, and then it switches back to male drivers. So a rather interesting distribution, and how that happens or more details on that, I don't have a good explanation, but this is what the data shows. You go to the next page, please. Of course, here's a breakdown table-wise with the specific numbers. You can look at those at your convenience. Keep going down. So the next thing we want to do is look at the crashes by location. And the first thing we did was look at crashes by sub area. We want to give you a flavor of where they actually are happening. One, of course, Lafayette. The second was basically the Purdue Levy area. And then West Lafayette, excluding the Purdue Levy area. Then rural Tippecanoe County. And then also we had one in Battleground and one in Dayton. Excuse me. Then we go into specific details about Lafayette. We also broke it further down into downtown Lafayette versus the remaining portion. And as you can see in downtown Lafayette, while it doesn't look like a high number, 38. I mean, downtown Lafayette, and we explain to you what the area is. It's bounded roughly by Salem Street, 18th Street, Alabama Street, and the Wabash River. So it's not a very large area within the Lafayette, the entire city. So you can see there, 38 of the 103 crashes occurred within the downtown area. If you could go on, next page. Here is the map that shows all of the crashes throughout Tippecanoe County, and they are color-coded by year. I know it's a very complicated map, and that's why we specifically then looked at the individual areas. So if you go to the next one, please. Here's the map that shows Lafayette. As you can see, there's some interesting trends. Again, look at Teal Road. And if you look at 18th Street, there are a number of crashes along there. Look at Union and Salem, there are a number of crashes along there. So rather interesting when you actually look to see where they're occurring. Go to the next one, please. And then also we give a summary of specifics. We do this by both corridor. Of course, 18th Street had the most with 15. Teal Road following up with that, 14, and then going down further. And then also looking at the crashes by intersection. And of course, in Lafayette, the one intersection that had the greatest number of bicycle crashes was Teal Road and 18th Street, and there was 4 there. Likewise, we did the same thing with the West Lafayette area, and then we're going to exclude Purdue and actually giving you the numbers. And then we also did the same thing for the Purdue area. And, you know, if you keep going down to this, gives you the whole West Lafayette area, including Purdue. This kind of gives you a comparison, as you can see, how many were in the Purdue area versus throughout the rest of the city. So you can see there's a concentration in the Purdue area. Not surprising, there are a lot of students. A lot of students ride their bike. But you can also see a little bit of trending here along Salisbury around Sagamore Parkway. And then there's some there on Lindbergh Road as well. You can go down to the next page, please. And here's our infamous picture of the Purdue area. And like to point out that if you look at the number of crashes, there were 20 on State Street and Mitch Daniels Boulevard. And of those 20, 14 occurred between Chauncey Avenue and Roebuck Drive. So this is, of course, where the cycle track is. Now, I also did a quick comparison here just right before the meeting. In 2013 to 2017, in that report, there were 18 crashes along State Street and 13 between Grant and River Road. And then the 2007 to 2012, there were a whopping 49 in that quarter and 31 were in Grant to River. So I would say overall, you know, Purdue has been doing a pretty good job in terms of addressing the crashes and then adding more facilities for cyclists. So hopefully we can look at the cycle track maybe again, especially between River Road and Chauncey, as that seems to be the highest concentrated area for bicycle crashes within Tippecanoe County. That's just a suggestion. I think it probably is warranted to a look. So if you continue going down, of course, we have this broken down by, these crashes broken down by corridor and then also intersection. And then we also reported the number of crashes within rural Tippecanoe County. Yes, that includes the ones in Battleground and Dayton. And then another thing we looked at is, where did the crash occur? And again, this comes from basically reading the officer's report, in that we looked at these locations, whether the crash occurred in the roadway. Of the 207, 33 of them did occur in the roadway. The vast majority did occur in an intersection, and then we had some in at a driveway. And then we had a couple, 3 in an alley, and then 1 in a sidewalk and 1 in a bike lane. So by far the vast majority, of course, as you see here, are intersections. So if you go down, next page, please. Okay, this is, since we used large graphics, this just shows the location for those in Tippecanoe County, Battleground, and Dayton. So you can see those. And if you go on, and then another thing we did, we looked at, of course, for intersection crashes, since this was a large number, we looked at, and then again, we had to get this from reading the crash report. We looked at if the crash occurred within a crosswalk. There were 55 of those, and not within a crosswalk. There was a majority, or 87 of those. And of course, one, we couldn't just figure out. There was not enough information in the report to figure it out. And in addition to that, then we also included who was at fault. Was the bicyclist at fault? Was the driver at fault? Or were both at fault? And we have more interesting information regarding those, but we thought this would be something of interest to some people, especially, whether they occurred in crosswalks. As you can see, when the crash occurred within a crosswalk, there was 34 that were the driver's fault, 8 were the bicyclist's fault. But within the remaining part of the intersection, it was pretty much split between the two, 43 for cyclists and 40 for drivers. So the next thing we looked at is something that is very rarely done, and that is, since we were reading the all of the reports, we looked at where the bicyclist was before the crash occurred. Was the cyclist actually riding on the road? Was it what were they riding on the sidewalk? Were they riding on a trail, bike lane, bike path, sharrow, cycle track, the alley, shoulder, and driveway? And this is really some interesting information on the road. Of course, the pre-crash location, of course, 83, most of them. But then, of course, 51 of the crashes, the pre-crash location was the cyclist was on a sidewalk. And unfortunately, there were 20 we cannot tell. And then another kind of surprise is that there were 18 that the cyclist was on a trail before the crash occurred. And there were 13 where the cyclist was either on a bike lane, bike path, or sharrow, and then 10 on the cycle track. So it's a different way to look at how the crashes occurred. And then if you go to the next page, oh, and we also give specific data on this. And then, of course, we have maps. We're just catching up to this. So if you can look at these in the future, keep going, please. Keep going, keep going. And then, okay, if you can enlarge it for just a little bit, I'd like to cover the bottom. In addition to looking at the pre-crash location of the bicyclist, we also looked at the direction of travel. For example, on a road, was the cyclist traveling in the correct direction with traffic? And then also, for example, on a sidewalk, was the cyclist, we looked at this and there's an explanation on how we looked at this in terms of, for example, if you have a north-south road and if the cyclist was on the right side or east side heading with traffic, we consider that the proper side. But if he was riding or she was riding basically against traffic, we thought, okay, when you think of a motorist and you're on the road and you're going to make a turn, you might, you will see the cyclist coming the direction towards you. But then if you're riding the wrong direction on the other side, if you're making a left-hand turn, for example, you might not see that cyclist. And then voila, you have a crash. So that's how we kind of handled sidewalk. So if you go down to the next page, basically here we have the location of crashes, where the road, riding the wrong way on the road, riding the wrong way on the sidewalk. Of course, there were more of those. And then, of course, on the shoulder, yeah, we do have some shoulders in the urban area, and they're both, as you can see, one crash on Teal Road, and then the other two are up there by, near Paramount Drive. So that gives you a kind of a location idea of where those occurred. And if you go on, please, to the next page. We have some more details here, in terms of crashes, riding on the road against traffic. More summary details, a further analysis on this. We have it broken down by riding on the road, riding against traffic. Table 34 looks specifically on the sidewalks. And then if you go to the next page, please. We didn't do a table because there were not that many 3 on a shoulder, so we just, put it actually in wording to show, to indicate or tell where they are at. Go to the next page, please. So this is our last, basically our last section of the report. We looked at a couple things here. Basically, one was who is at fault, bicyclists, motorists, or both. And then we also looked at contributing circumstance. So if you go down just a pinch and get the table, keep going. Next page, please. So an officer gets to choose what they call contributing circumstance, basically looking at the crash and what basically caused it. So example, for all of the crashes, the number one contributing circumstance was a failure to yield right away. A total of 110 out of the 207, over half the crashes were of that circumstance. 21, 10%, just a pinch over, were pedestrian action. 20 were basically contributed to disregarding either the traffic signal or the regulatory stop sign, where the cyclist or the motor vehicle just kind of blew right through it. The other driver explained in the narrative, basically they have this in there for like a catch-all. So it could be different types, and you have to look at the individual reports to tease this information out. And then it goes down by number: improper passing, improper turning, following too closely, improper lane usage, and so forth. So what we did in addition to this is, of course, we have the three different types of faults that we look at, whether crashes were from the fault of the cyclist, bicyclist, motorist, or both. And we did a couple different things. For example, table 37 here is that the number of crashes where the bicyclist was at fault, and we look at what the contributing circumstance was. And also by, of course, you have the total, and by year. Again, no surprise, failure to yield right away, 28 out of the 66. And then also the disregarding the traffic signal regulatory sign. If you could go to the next page, please. Here we have a breakdown, additional mapping that you can look at in the future. So if you can go down some more. Another table that we looked at, this again is where bicyclists was fault. We looked at the pre-crash location, whether it be the road, sidewalk, the cannot tell, the alley, etc. So again, 37 were on the road. And then we flipped it, looked at basically the same two things, the contributing circumstance by the motorist, and you see the table here. Again, the top one, failure to yield right away, 74 of the 111 crashes. And then going down to the next one, table, or well, more figures, you can look at those. Of course, we have figures, lots of figures, and then a lot of information. I'm just trying to cover a general high overview of this. We have pre-crash location by year, motorist was at fault. And then following this, we have the same two tables, basically where both were at fault. If you can go down to the next page, of course, more mapping, and there's the two tables for that. So I think if you go down, let's go down to the next page, more mapping. Yeah, we put a lot of mapping in here. Keep going. More mapping. So you can see we did a lot of work to this. Let's go to the next page, please. So what our plans to do, since now we have this crash report done, is that what we would like to do is that, okay, yeah, we have the report to do. What are we going to do next? So what we plan on doing is that we would like to sit down with the local government engineers and local law enforcement, and then basically do what we're doing tonight, present this information to them, of course, by their jurisdiction. So we feel like it's important that they see the data for what has happened between in the 5 years, within their jurisdiction. We would also like to do this, of course, we do have some state roads, U.S. highways in Greater Lafayette area. We'd like to do the same thing with the Indiana Department of Transportation staff. We feel it's very important because they maintain and operate the roads, that they need to see this information as well. So that's a thing that we would like to do. The next thing that is on our to-do list is that we know Lafayette has a bicycle and pedestrian citizens committee, and then West Lafayette has the same pedestrian committee as well. We would like to present the findings of this report to both of them. And then finally, if we have enough staff time, we'd like to specifically look at the high crash locations. And I would suspect that the number one would be the cycle track. So basically, so instead of leaving, here we have the report, we're done, and then this is basically what we feel that we need to do next, to basically present this information, and then from there, hopefully, the cities, the Indiana Department of Transportation will look at it and then look at what they can do to improve that corridor or that intersection. So basically, in a nutshell, I know I went through all of that data fairly quick. So now's the time for you to answer questions or ask questions. Hopefully I can answer them. There's a lot of data here.
Hey Doug, this is Gene. Did you include scooters as bicyclists, or are they put pedestrians?
They are excluded completely. When we were reading the reports, of course, the police officer is allowed to put in petacycle, and when they did that, they did include scooters, but scooters are motorized. We specifically wanted to focus, like we did in the previous two reports, only on bicycles. Now, I suspect there are probably going to be a number of scooters crashes that we probably should look at, but we excluded them from this analysis.
So you didn't include motorized bicycles either on Purdue campus?
That is correct. And the reason why is because it's very difficult. There's no specific way a police officer can note if it's motorized bicycle. The only way that we could tell if it was or was not is if the police officer mentions it specifically in the crash report. And when we were reading the narrative, if the officer did include that information, that was pulled from this report. So maybe some of these do include motorized bicycles, but we do not have any information to allow us to fully vet that question. Any other comments, questions? Everybody.
Yes. Stuart Frescas here. Would you say is the situation getting better or worse? Your gut feeling, Doug.
Oh, overall, I think actually, looking at what the cities and the county have been doing for the past 10 years specifically, I think it's making things better. I mean, we now have a focus on, trails. We have a greater emphasis on cycling, walking. We do have a complete street policy that we put together years ago, and federal aid projects are now required to be, have that complete street design. What we're seeing is a lot of projects that are just funded with strictly local funds are complete street compliant. So I think we are seeing a lot more emphasis, and especially on the Purdue campus. My gosh, the number of bike lanes, the facilities that have been put in place, especially over the last 10 years, and with the emphasis on additional work they've been doing, I think overall we are moving forward to seeing, and the numbers bear this out, seeing a safer environment. While it's not totally safe, there are still issues that we need to address. We are seeing a safer environment now for bicyclists and pedestrians than we are 10, 20 years ago.
Thank you very much, Doug, for your hard work.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to present all this information to you. Again, the report is available on the APC webpage. We have it actually listed kind of down towards the bottom, not at the bottom, but towards the bottom. So if you'd like to read the entire report at your leisure after this, please feel free to do. And if you have any comments or questions after that, feel free to either call or email me. I'll be more than glad to answer or talk with you about them. And again, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Doug. Some really good analysis that you put together there, so thank you for sharing. Just as a quick preview, we will be having some more crash information coming up at future meetings. So this is going to be a topic that we continue to present about. So with that, we're going to go on to our next agenda item, which is the Safe Streets for All program. And what I'm showing here is something that really ties in with some of what Doug was talking about with the increased emphasis on safety that we have not only here locally, but throughout the state. Specifically, this is through a federal program called the Safe Streets for All program. And the ultimate goal of that program for us is to be able to get some funding to put together some safety projects, which will hopefully improve safety for especially bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit users, but also motorists as well in our community. However, in order to do that, we have to apply for some grant funding. And in order to apply for the grant funding, we have to have a plan in place that meets several requirements. And in order to do that, we have retained a consultant, Kimberly Horn, who's been helping us out with that. And what you're seeing on the screen right now is a public outreach effort that we've been working on with them. This is a survey where people can put comments on the map. So you can kind of see here, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. So like this one is a specific pedestrian comment about how the intersection of Grant and Stadium is dangerous to cross. And then this one is a bicyclist comment, specifically about the map not showing a trail. That's been corrected. Yeah, so this is the State and River intersection that Doug was talking about. So we also got some feedback on that. And then you can also see there's some about motorists, etc. So really quick, just to show this. So if you wanted to add something, you would go over to the add a comment, and then you can, type in your email. And then once you do that, it will give you access to allow you to submit a comment by some of these different categories that you are seeing here. Additionally, there's a survey that is tied with this. So if you click on the take a survey, there's a few pages you go through. It's really pretty short. There aren't too many questions. So just wanted to kind of highlight that this is something that's ongoing. This survey will be open for a few more months. And in order to get to it, this is on our website. So I believe we have this one. Yeah. So right here, the Safe Streets and Road for All survey. So the link then is right there that I'm mousing over. That's what I was just showing you. But this is the easy way to get to it is from our website, which is tippecanoe.in.gov/685/crashes, or it's through the transportation planning section of the Area Plan Commission website. So we've gotten some pretty good responses so far for this, and we're looking to continue to get some responses, and then we will use that along with some of the crash analysis that we've been showing in order to be able to hopefully apply for some funding. So now that I've kind of gone through that, does anyone have any questions about this? Okay, well, I guess I'm not hearing any. So with that, I would like to leave just another minute or so, just in case there are any online comments. And while we wait to see if anyone has commented on the streams, I will kind of fill that time by mentioning that we do have 3 more meetings of this committee this year. So of course it is on the second Wednesday every quarter. So our next one will be in June on the 12th. And then September 11th and December 11th will be the other 2 for this year. So are there any other comments from the committee while we wait to see if anything has come in from the online streams? Okay, well, I don't hear anything from the committee. Aria, have we gotten anything from the online streams?
Yeah, it's about a minute here, and I haven't seen any public comments on Facebook or YouTube at this time.
Okay, so with that, we are moving on to our potential final item, which would be adjournment. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
This is Jane, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion from Jean, and if we can get a second.
From Amy.
And a second from Amy, thank you. So we'll go ahead and do a quick roll call vote for adjournment. Elva James. Looks like maybe we lost Elva. Jean Croshan.
Yes.
Amy Kristen Presson. Nick Harvey.
Okay.
Steve Clevenger.
Yes.
Deanna McMillan.
Hello, Deanna's here. Yes.
Drew Smith.
Yes.
Jim Beatty.
Yes.
And Stuart Frescus.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time tonight, and we look forward to seeing you in June.
Bye-bye.